You just got your biggest invoice paid. 5 figures hit your account. You feel unstoppable until April, when the IRS sends you a bill for $3,200 you don't have. If you're a freelancer, a contractor, or a small business owner who's ever stared at a client payment and thought, "I made it," only to get blindsided by a tax bill months later, this video is for you. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to take every single payment you receive and turn it into a system, one that protects your taxes, pays you a real salary, and finally makes your income feel stable instead of terrifying. This isn't about making more money. It's about never being blindsided again. Here's the thing nobody tells you when you go freelance. A big invoice isn't income. It's a pile of money that hasn't been sorted yet. But it doesn't feel that way. It feels like a win. So you pay off a credit card, upgrade your laptop, finally take that trip you've been putting off. And then quarterly taxes come due, or worse, next April arrives, and you owe the government a number that makes your stomach drop. This isn't a "you're bad with money" problem. This is a "nobody taught freelancers how business income actually works" problem. When you had a 9 to 5, taxes were invisible, pulled out before you ever saw the money. Now, every dollar that lands in your account looks like it's yours. It's not. And that one misunderstanding is the single biggest reason freelancers end up in a feast or famine panic cycle year after year. The moment a client payment lands, not at the end of the week, not at the end of the month, the moment it lands, split it 3 ways. A percentage for taxes, a percentage for business expenses and reinvestment, and a percentage that becomes your actual paycheck. Your brain treats whatever's sitting in your main checking account as spendable. If the tax money is sitting right next to your grocery money, you will eventually spend it. Not because you're irresponsible, but because that's how money psychology works. The second you physically move that money into a separate account, your brain stops seeing it as yours to spend. It becomes invisible the same way a 9 to 5 paycheck's withholding is invisible. Let's use that $3,200 mistake. Say you invoice a client for $10,000. The moment it clears, you move 30%, $3,000, into a dedicated tax holding account. You move 20%, $2,000, into a business operating account for software, contractors, equipment. The remaining 50%, $5,000, goes into your personal owner's pay account. You never see the $3,000 as spendable because it never touches your everyday account. When tax season hits, the money is already sitting there waiting. This single habit, split before you spend, is the difference between freelancers who dread every invoice and freelancers who feel calm cashing one. Stop guessing at "maybe I'll owe like 20%. Calculate your actual estimated tax rate, self-employment tax plus federal plus state. So the number you set aside in the first step is based on math, not a vibe. Most new freelancers underestimate because they're only thinking about income tax, forgetting self-employment tax covers both the employee and employer side of Social Security and Medicare, roughly 15.3% on top of regular income tax. That's why so many freelancers set aside 20% to be safe, and then get hit with a shortfall. Knowing your real number means your holding account is never underfunded. A freelance web developer earning $70,000 a year in profit might land in a combined effective rate of around 25 to 30% once self-employment tax and federal tax are combined, depending on state. That's not a scare number, it's just math. Once you know it's 28%, you're no longer setting aside roughly some money. You're setting aside exactly what you'll owe, so the tax account is always right-sized, not something you're crossing your fingers about. This step turns tax season from an emotional event into a math event. And math doesn't cause panic, uncertainty does. Instead of spending directly from your business account whenever a client pays you, set yourself up on a fixed, predictable owner's paycheck. A consistent amount transferred to your personal account on a regular schedule, regardless of how lumpy your actual client payments are. This is the single biggest shift between a freelancer who feels like they're on a financial roller coaster and one who feels stable. Your business income is irregular. Your personal spending doesn't have to be. By keeping a buffer in your business operating account and paying yourself a level amount, say the 1st and 15th of every month, your household bills stop caring whether June was a slow month or a huge one. Imagine a freelance copywriter who brings in $2,000 one month and $9,000 the next. Instead of living off whatever hits the account, she calculates her average monthly income over the past 6 months. Let's say it comes out to $5,000. and pays herself that amount every month like clockwork, regardless of what actually came in. The overflow from big months sits in the business buffer and covers the gap during slow months. Her rent, her groceries, her life. None of it swings wildly based on client timing anymore. This is the step that turns feast or famine into steady, even though the actual client payments never change. Quick pause. If this is helping untangle how you think about your business money, hit subscribe because the rest of this framework is where it really clicks into place. Set calendar reminders 2 weeks before each of the 4 estimated quarterly tax deadlines, and automate a transfer from your tax holding account to the IRS and your state, rather than deciding in the moment whether you can afford to pay. The reason quarterly taxes feel like a threat is that freelancers treat them as a decision. Can I afford to pay this right now? Instead of a scheduled, automatic event. If you've already been splitting your income the way we just covered, the money is already there. Paying quarterly taxes becomes as automatic as a bill you don't even think about, instead of a dreaded gut check every few months. A freelance photographer sets 4 recurring calendar events: mid-April, mid-June, mid-September, mid-January, each with a note listing exactly how much is sitting in the tax account. When the date arrives, there's no decision to make. The money's there. The payment goes out. What used to be 4 moments of dread a year becomes 4 non-events. Removing the decision removes the anxiety. That's the whole trick. Beyond your tax and paycheck splits, build a separate buffer inside your business account equal to 1 to 2 months of your average operating costs and owner's pay. Money that exists purely to smooth over slow stretches. Freelancers don't just have irregular income, they have irregular timing. A client who pays 60 days late can turn a fine month into a scary one, even if the total money exists. A runway buffer means a late payment or a slow month doesn't ripple into missed rent or a canceled tax payment. It's the difference between reacting to your business and running it. A freelance consultant with $6,000 in average monthly expenses and owner's pay builds up a buffer of $9,000 over several strong months. When a client delays payment by 6 weeks, instead of panicking, she simply draws from the buffer, keeps her own paycheck consistent, and refills the buffer once the payment finally lands. The late payment becomes a non-event instead of a crisis. This buffer is what finally makes irregular income feel like a stable business, instead of a string of financial emergencies. Let's talk about Jess. Jess is a freelance graphic designer who, for her first 2 years freelancing, lived exactly like the hook of this video. Big invoice comes in, she feels rich, she spends like it, and then April rolls around and she owes thousands of dollars she doesn't have. 2 years in a row. She started associating client payments with dread instead of relief, which is such a strange, backwards place to end up as a business owner. The turning point wasn't earning more money. Jess was already making enough. The turning point was the day she opened 3 separate bank accounts and started splitting every single payment the moment it landed: tax, business, pay. Within 4 months, her tax account had more than enough sitting in it before her next quarterly deadline even arrived. She wasn't richer. She was organized. And for the first time, an invoice landing in her account felt like relief instead of a ticking clock. That's the shift this framework is built around. Not earn more. Structure what you already earn so it stops working against you. Let's bring this together. Split every payment the moment it lands. Know your real tax percentage instead of guessing. Pay yourself a steady salary instead of living off whatever's left. Automate your quarterly deadlines so they're never a decision. And build a runway buffer so a late payment never turns into a crisis. None of this is about restricting yourself or being scared of your own money. It's about running your freelance work like an actual business, because that's what it is. A 9-to-5 employee doesn't have to think about any of this. You do. And once you build this system, you stop feeling like you're gambling every time an invoice gets paid, and you start feeling like someone who's actually in control of their business. If this video gave you a clearer picture of how to handle your next big invoice, subscribe, because next week, we're breaking down exactly how much you should be setting aside based on your specific state and income level so you're never guessing again. And I want to know, what's the number that scared you the most? The first tax bill that caught you off guard? Drop it in the comments. If you're a freelancer or small business owner, you already know the specific gut drop I'm talking about. Struggling with client payments coming in late or unpredictably. That's exactly what we're covering next.